Hey, New York Liberty fans, game 3 tonight in Minnesota. And the series is all tied up. Here are some of my thoughts, including me and Brian Florentin talking post game, a fun conversation with Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, and a few more little nuggets for you. It's Gotta Get Up, a Black Rosie Media podcast. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. Hey there, everybody. Today is game day, and the New York Liberty are looking to take a 2-1 lead in the WNBA finals over the Minnesota Lynx. They will have to do it, though, in Minneapolis at Target Center. My name, Erica L. Ayala. I am the head Black Rosie in charge, aka the founder of Black Rosie Media, and we host Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Now, Brian Florentin and I did do an immediate reaction to game 2, and I honestly just got a little bit busy traveling back to Black Rosie Media headquarters, so I never posted that. That's on me, mea culpa. Forgive me. So I'm going to play that shortly, but I also want to play you a little clip. This is Betnijah Laney-Hamilton talking to media ahead of today's game, and there was some discrepancy about what she meant by that shot finally kicked in. If you listen to Good Game with Sarah Spain, where of course our co-host Misha Jones is a producer, then you would have heard this week that Sarah Spain and Misha Jones, when recapping game 2, were trying to decide exactly what Betnijah Laney-Hamilton meant by that shot finally kicked in. And I was wondering too. I thought it meant one thing, and then I heard the podcast and I thought a different thing. Well, today, before game 3, I was able to ask Betnijah Laney-Hamilton. And in addition to absolutely loving her answer, check out Courtney Vandersloot's face. For you, you were able to speak to Holly Rowe in game, in the last game, and I think you said something effective to, the shot kicked in.
Well, Betnijah, you have a career playoff high points in this game so far. How have you been able to fight through all you're dealing with physically to be at your best today?
Man, that shot finally kicked in.
I was curious, did you mean your jump shot, or were you referring to a different type of shot?
Both.
Thanks, B. And so you see that both of them, I think, with a sly smile, Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, it's been documented, has been dealing with injury, but she came up huge for the New York Liberty. And between game 1 and game 2, my big question was Leonie Fibish was such a big part of game 1, but it seemed like a missed opportunity. The New York Liberty were not able to capitalize on it. And Leo did have a little more difficulty on the offensive side, but was huge on the defensive side and was ultimately rewarded with that 3-pointer on the breakaway, which is something that Courtney Vandersloot called a gutsy, a gutsy shot. And Sandy Brondello, I wrote this for CBS Sports. Go check out, please go read that Betnijah Laney-Hamilton story. It took a little convincing that we needed a story on Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, but we know she's the queen bee for a reason. But Sandy Brondello also talking about Leo and saying a 3-pointer is like a layup for Leo. So I'm curious to see how the New York Liberty are able to, if at all, get Leonie Fibish involved in the offense. But that is the beauty of this New York Liberty squad. I do think also, if you listen to Good Game with Sarah Spain, Michael Vopel was on that show. And Michael M.A. Vopel with Sarah Spain made a really great point regarding there's so much talk about the history of the New York Liberty and us effectively, the franchise, bombing out in the finals. Let's remember, everyone, new ownership, new venue, no longer under the, whatever bad juju is happening at Madison Square Garden. New team, completely new team, no carryovers from Westchester County or Madison Square Garden any longer. Rebecca Allen was the last holdout there. So this is a brand new team. Are there similarities in the franchise? I mean, listen, I'm a Mets fan. I know that, yes, even though you have a different roster, different ownership, you can still have the same old poop when it comes to the team that you love. But this is a new team. And I was able to ask, Courtney Vandersloot a little bit about just coming off of last year. So many of the players talked about how, they wanted to be able to use the momentum from last year and how it finished and use it positively this year. I wanted to ask the question a little bit differently because I'm really curious as to what she sees as the growth in this New York Liberty team. We talk about it on the podcast, but here's what Courtney Vandersloot had to say regarding how this team is using what happened last year as fuel.
Yeah, I think last year we learned. We went through adversity together. We learned. We took something from it. I think so far we've responded well to it. We've used it to our benefit, and now we're in a really good opportunity, another chance to compete for a championship. We have some lessons that we learned from last year, and we're looking to kind of finish the job.
Looking to finish the job. You absolutely love to hear it. And a part of the way that this New York Liberty team is going to be able to finish the job is by their depth. And the depth, yes, means some of the role players on the bench, Leonie Fibish playing a starting role now with Courtney Vandersloot now coming off the bench with her veteran experience. I still think there are more minutes that Niara Sabali can get, that KT can get, that KB can get. I don't know that we go too much deeper into the bench there, but even that, when you bring in any of those players that I just mentioned, Sloot, Sabali, Thornton, and Burke, that's 4 players, then you can rotate with your 5 starters. And that's been huge, especially from a perspective of how many ball handlers the New York Liberty have. And you've seen they've gone to Stewie for ball handling. They've played Sabrina on the ball, Sabrina off the ball, Courtney Vandersloot with some minutes. So there's a lot. Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, Jackie Powell and I talk about so much that the New York Liberty want multiple ball handlers at any given time. Betnijah Laney-Hamilton can also do that. And so I asked Sloot, as a true point guard, how does that impact, if at all, how she plays the game? Here's what Sloot said to me earlier today. And I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, there's so many different ball handlers that the New York Liberty can go to. When you, as a point guard, have that as a part of the arsenal of the team, how, if at all, does that change your approach to when you're working on the court?
Yeah, spend a little bit more time off the ball, knowing that we have a lot of playmakers and we have a lot of different players that can attack and handle the ball well. And we want to use that to our advantage because the more ball handlers and more playmakers, the easier it is, the harder it is to guard. So, you pick your moments, you stay ready on the opposite side, knowing that the ball is going to come back to you. But, really just relying on your teammates to make plays.
And so, as always, so grateful for the New York Liberty players, whether I'm communicating with them virtually or in person, but they are always pretty fun. And we heard from Betnijah Laney-Hamilton. So overall, before I take you to the post-game reaction with Brian Florentin and I from after game 2, my big keys are the New York Liberty need to level up. We have seen them get really good aggressive starts against Minnesota, and we've seen twice Minnesota come back. Now, the great thing is that in game 1, Minnesota was able to overtake the New York Liberty, where the Liberty did not allow that in game 2. Minnesota never led the game, and there were no ties. So I think even from game to game, we continue to see the progression of this New York Liberty team. And that's why I wanted to ask Sloot. I know she's been asked, the players have been asked that question a lot, but I think it's important, especially as we're trying to document however this season ends. I've been on record saying I don't see this as a failure of a season for the New York Liberty. I don't know that there's anything that could make me say that, but who knows? We'll have to see how the season ends, whether it's a championship or not. But the progression of this New York Liberty team, it's the stuff that if this team can somehow stay together, and that seems really difficult, especially with the expansion draft coming up. But if there's some way to keep this core together for another handful of years, this could be a team where we look back and we start seeing the building blocks. And so that's what I'm excited about, the long the long haul, the long game of it all. And this is a really compelling New York Liberty squad. I can't say that guarantees a championship this year. Can't say it guarantees a win today, but there's something special. The lessons have been learned, and this is a hungry New York Liberty squad, and they have to play that way. They have to play with that hunger. We heard Breanna Stewart saying that she didn't want to feel the way they felt in game one. She wanted to reverse the narrative. When it comes to reversing the narrative, she and Sabrina Ionescu, Stewie and Sabrina Ionescu, I think, are the drivers. Stewie is that franchise player right now, but Sabrina is quickly taking on the keys and has done has improved massively, I should say, on the defensive end. Then you have the 1-2-3 punch of Leo, Betnijah Laney-Hamilton. I still think Kayla Thornton plays a huge role on this team that isn't really documented. The fact that KT, KB also can come in and get and Niara Sabali, they can give a break to Sabrina, to Stewie, to Jonquel Jones, who I haven't even mentioned yet. Jonquel Jones brings up the ball. Jonquel Jones playing in the paint. You've heard me say multiple times again, Jonquel Jones has to get touches for this New York Liberty team to be successful. There's just so many weapons to deploy. And last year, our conversation was, does this New York Liberty know which buttons to press to get the optimal result? The answer was no. This New York Liberty team, sometimes it feels like they're still learning that, but all of the progression from last year hasn't been lost. It's been improved upon. And again, I don't know if that means they'll be championship, they'll win a championship year. They're already in the playoffs in the finals once again. But we just have to wait and see. So on another video, now I want to play you the video, Brian Florentin and I talking post game. This is after game 2. You'll see that we have the finals backdrop. We are at the press podium that the New York Liberty usually use, and breaking down what we saw from game 2. Here's Brian and me, Erica L. Ayala, bringing you a recap. And again, apologies for forgetting to post it, but a recap from game 2 that I think will help you get ready for tonight, game 3. And also for all my New Yorkers, ya tu sabes, let's go Mets. I'll catch you I'll catch you on Thursday. We are going to have some of our other Black Rosie Media creators and content creators. We're going to have some of our other Black Rosie Media content creators join me on Thursday night. It's going to be around 7:30 Eastern time. We're going to do another live stream. We haven't done a live stream. I've been traveling. A lot of us have been traveling for the finals and other things, but we are going to have a live stream between game 3, which is tonight, and game 4. So if you have any burning questions, make sure you join us for that live stream. The details and everything you'll find in the next 24 hours or so on Black Rosie Media. But all right, got to get up, fans. Here goes Brian and I talking after game 2. All right, Brian, game 2 in the books. We are also trying something new. Never done this before, but we're trying a huddle on Slack. So you can join in Slack while we're recording. So this will be a recorded pre-game. Nope, pre-game's before the game. Post-game. There we go. Words are hard. Recap, that's what I was looking for. So we're going to do our recap, but if you are in the huddle, you can ask us questions live. All right, Brian, we've got the official box score here. What stands out to you and how the Liberty were able to get this win?
Well, the first number that jumps out is that big old 7. That is 7, a finals record for Breanna Stewart in steals tonight.
All right, Brian, game 2 in the books. We are also trying something new. Never done this before, but we're trying a huddle on Slack. So you can join in Slack while we're recording. So this will be a recorded pre-game. Nope, pre-game's before the game. Post-game. There we go. Words are hard. Recap, that's what I was looking for. So we're going to do our recap, but if you are in the huddle, you can ask us questions live. All right, Brian, we've got the official box score here. What stands out to you and how the Liberty were able to get this win?
Well, the first number that jumps out is that big old 7. That is 7, a finals record for Breanna Stewart in steals tonight. It felt like she was all over the court and was really able to sort of circumvent Minnesota's offense. Like, it took them longer to get into their sets. It was harder for them to sort of make passes to go from side to side because we've been this is where it pays off to ask questions ahead of time. Like, we've been asking her about her wingspan for like 2 months now, and we really saw it in full effect today. Like, she was really able to just sort of like go through every single deflection, make every single play. And during the game, I didn't realize this, but she's never won Defensive Player of the Year, which is kind of wild when you think about the player she is.
You know, it's not wild to me because her defense is wildly overlooked. I was in another group chat that shall remain nameless, but you can deduce as you wish. But, you know, multiple times I've had to step up and say, if you see Stewie not doing something on the offensive side, then the first thing you should do is check to see what the numbers are for the person she's defending. Because Stewie anchors this team, especially with in the post, alongside Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, who we will definitely talk about, defensively. Defensively, Stewie is her for the New York Liberty. And even in game 1, had a massive block down the stretch, even to keep the New York Liberty with any hope of winning, which they ultimately did not. But Stewie, that's why, and we have this conversation with Roberta, who helps co-host Tempestagi Talk. Her game translates so well at the international level because of that two-way. And to see her get the finals record, to be in the building, huge. She talked to the crowd after, was so complimentary, as she always is, knows how to play the New York crowd. But this was a big win for the New York Liberty.
Yeah, like, I feel like going down 0-2, it's not impossible, but it's incredibly unlikely that she would come back, especially against a team as fantastic as Minnesota is. And then you're going in for 2 games at that raucous Target Center. You know it's going to be turned up in there. So having to win twice and then have to come on back on 1 day rest and you're back in your building for a game 5 to do that, that would have been really tough. So the fact that they were able to, and it surprised me because it didn't feel like it. They led wire to wire today, which surprised me because it felt like there were various points where Minnesota had them on the ropes. But the fact that they were able to hold the lead and then finish really strong down the stretch, I think really sort of boosts their confidence going into game 3 on Wednesday night.
Yeah, exactly that. And it was not for a lack of effort for Minnesota, because they did a lot of what they did in game 1 to try and come back. But one thing that we talked about in our pregame for real was that Cheryl Reeve noted how the New York Liberty were able to take advantage in transition. And I think turnovers is something else that if we look at not just the turnovers for each team, because at the half they were almost identical, but it's the points off of the turnovers. And I think at halftime the Liberty had 26 or so points, which is a wild amount off of 9 or 10. I forget who had 9, who had 10. But that's a backbreaker if you're Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that for a series like this against teams that are so good in the ways that they are, you can't afford to make any sort of mistakes. Like, there were a couple possessions in the game where New York, like, rushed into shots, and then there was one where Sabrina rushed up a floater, and then I think there was one where Stewie rushed as well, too. Minnesota gets about in transition, they get 5 points off of that. And then what could have been a 15-point lead at half is only 10.
Right.
And then that perilous feeling is there because, like, we made that mistake. They capitalized. Like, that's the thing that when we talked to Liberty all season about Minnesota, they always mention that whenever we make a mistake, they capitalize immediately.
Yes.
And I think that's a sign of a really well-disciplined, organized team on the other side. And it's a situation where if you're New York, your focus can't wane for even a second, because if you do, and you, for example, if you overhelp, corner three's open, easy layup going the other way, these opportunities present themselves, and you have to really make sure that you have the discipline and the wherewithal to sort of withstand those big runs and minimize the effects of any natural mistakes you may make.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about Betnijah Laney-Hamilton because it's someone in our preview that we talked about, and I was having a conversation with a fellow beat writer, Jackie Powell.
Yeah.
Because she didn't look like she was moving particularly well in game 1 or even in practice before game 2.
Yeah.
And you and I had the conversation, is this the game 2? Because you know there's guaranteed a game 3. Is this where maybe you see if you need to deploy different things? Well, I don't know if Betnijah Laney-Hamilton listens to the podcast, but her answer was an emphatic hell no, Erica. I'm good. 20 points. And just clutch points.
Yeah. I think that especially, Sandy, when they made, I think we talked about it yesterday, like when they made the lineup switch, it was, okay, we have the other ball handler next to Sab and B. And since B has been a little bit less than full strength, they've had to go to Stewie as a second ball handler. And I think for Laney in particular, the fact that she's able to punish that dropping defense, the fact that she's able to spot up in the corner, so when Stewie or Sabrina drives, they can kick out to that corner 3 right there. Like Sabrina mentioned, late in the game, she was able to fool Alana Smith and find B in the corner. So the fact that you have that valuable knockdown spot-up shooter in the corners opens up the rest of the floor for New York, preventing Minnesota from collapsing in the paint in the ways that they do. Like, you can't, when the starting lineup is the way it is, there are literally no points you can take. You can't play off of anybody. Because you play off Sabrina, you know what's going to happen. You play off of Laney, corner 3, pull up in the mid-range, or post up in the basket against a mismatch. You have Stewie and JJ with more room to operate. Everything sort of like opens up and maximizes for New York when B is playing in the way that she did today. And I think especially down the stretch, that corner 3 she hit late, I think really just sort of like settled everyone's nerves. Because a while back in Vegas, I talked about how the building didn't feel antsy when Vegas made their run in game 2. You felt the energy a little bit. And I think everyone was so scarred by game 1 where it's like, oh God, they're about to do it, aren't they?
Yeah. Tarika Foster-Brasby put out a tweet, and someone from the Black Rosie Media Twitter account, I have no idea who, was like, of course we're not getting hyped. Like, we remember what happened in game 1. Like, we about to see this all the way out. Like, we're not taking our eye off. Don't get too high, don't get too low. And then for me, the Leonie Phoebish 3-pointer, because she took a shot prior to, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be it. This is where she gets her points. She missed it, and then it was, what was it, a steal?
Sabrina forced a turnover.
A turnover, and the ball gets to Leo, and she just
hilarious.
Took a breath, took a nap. I don't know. Had so much time to set up that shot, and the crowd, 18,000 plus, erupted.
That was so hilarious because I'm sitting there. I'm like, why are you shooting this? And then it goes up. I'm like, yeah, what are you doing? And then it's, there it is.
See, I was the opposite. I was like, I know you better take that shot. You better take that dang shot. I loved it. I really thought she was gonna make the first one, and then when I saw her take it again, I was like, bank, we money. Sloot said to us in the scrum that she loved it. I asked her what Leo provides when she's not scoring 17. She talked about what she can do on the defensive end, and then there was a follow-up. So what did you think about that three? She's like, oh, I forget, she said gutsy. I think that's the word she used. She called it a gutsy shot, and she loved it. But that's the kind of championship killer mentality that we've talked about. Again, Jonathan Kolb has really scouted for. And Leo is the prototype for experience, even though she's a rookie in the WNBA. Experience, killer instincts, and just a drive to win. And that was huge. Was it the winner? No, there was a lot happening, but from a momentum perspective, from a confidence perspective, from a perspective of, oh yeah, this is a team where anybody and everybody can beat her. That is, in a series, that's when you're a Minnesota, you're like, dang. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I think that especially, like, in thinking about Leo's shot, like, whenever you're trying to win a championship, like, can't nobody be scared. Like, everyone's got to be, okay,
never scared.
I'm on the court, I'm going to make this happen, and I'm going to do what I do. And for Leo, she's always talked about throughout the year, like, taking those crowd-pleasing threes that get the building all the way up.
Crowd-pleaser for sure.
And that one is, like, you felt, the energy was, like, high throughout the game. And then once that hit, it's like,
it just erupted.
It was almost like cathartic in a sense, where it's like everyone was so nervous for much of the fourth quarter. When they got down to 2, it's like, oh my God, it's happening again. And then big bucket down the stretch, big three, and then that three was essentially the finishing touch on it.
It was the release
and then
valve.
Everything just went all the way up even more. I think that especially when you have home court, you need plays like that because the crowd works as the sixth man in a lot of respects. And when you have 18,000, a record for this building, really come through in the ways that they did, it really just gives players even more confidence to do what they do, not play with that fear, play with that toughness and that grit, and really be able to make your impact in the way that you can.
And to that end, similarly to how we talked about Stewie on the defensive end and not getting the respect that I think she deserves, and I want to talk about Sabrina. So Sabrina Ionescu, we know had a pretty big game in game one. I think if you look offensively, you might be like, yo, what's going on? That being said, this is when we go back to our conversation. Is Sab a 1? Is she a 2? Is she a hybrid? I think the answer is she can be all of the above for the New York Liberty. And while she was able to get her shots early, which was key to an early run once again, she then had to play a facilitator role to keep the New York Liberty momentum going.
Yeah, I think it's tough to sort of like chart maturity in a sense, where it's like you never know. It's like, oh, this player has got it now. They've been here X, Y, and Z. They know what to do in this situation. But I think that for a guard, especially a lead guard in the way that Sabrina is, there's a value in knowing that, okay, I don't need to shoot. I can just be on the court and still make things happen for my teammates, or just the fact that I know that they're going to be so focused on me, it gives everyone else room to work.
Exactly.
And I think that there's a value in knowing that, okay, even though I'm hot early, I don't have to keep shooting just because I'm hot. I think that in the second quarter of game one, she had those bad moments where it's like she's just forcing shots, like just sort of forcing the action, not taking advantage of Minnesota switching, not getting the ball inside, not being able to sort of like get to the second or third action in that way that New York normally does. So I think for her tonight, even though only 15 points, but still 15 points and big 3-pointers early on, I think the fact that she was able to sort of keep the offense organized, keep things humming, make sure that they were able to get as many quality possessions as possible, even the possessions where they missed, it's like, okay, or the ones where the shot clock ticked like a hair of a second after those kind of plays. The fact that you were able to sort of keep the process solid, I think, is very valuable, and I think speaks to a growth, and I think a continued trust that she's been able to establish with her teammates, and I think within her own process as a player.
I agree. Jingle jangle, give her the keys.
Yep.
Let's go. I want to talk about Minnesota for a little bit here because you get 16 from Collier, even though she runs into some foul trouble. I don't think the New York Liberty, if I'm being honest, at least at that point in the game, were able to capitalize. You have someone like Nafisa Collier who makes things difficult for a player like Stewie on the New York offensive end, but she also makes things difficult for Stewie and the rest of the New York Liberty on the New York Liberty defensive end. And, you know, you could see some of that frustration bubble over. Fee didn't like the fourth foul in particular, but that's what you're going to get from Fee. And that might be on the lower end of what we even see from her throughout this series. I don't know that she scores lower than 16 the rest of the way. That's something that has gone pretty wrong. We've seen that in the postseason, but again, this is the finals. I don't think that there's any way that Cheryl Reeve and the rest of the Minnesota Lynx are going to want her scoring anything less than 16.
Yeah, and I think that what helped is that they were able, I have to check to see if this is a career high for her, but they forced her into 7 turnovers, which, hey, when you're able to take possessions away from Minnesota, like you're able to sort of like get out in transition, or just get into your own half court set where you can sort of like run your offense, work in the post, things like that, make her work a little bit harder on that side of the ball. That's valuable in and of itself. So even though she was able to shoot well when she did get the shots up, the fact that you were able to frustrate her, get her on the bench with foul trouble, I think speaks well to what New York is doing, and I think is something that they can look at. They can look at the tape and say, okay, this was we were able to sort of like not overhelp in the post. A lot of it was single coverage, which, hey, if she makes those fadeaways, you just gotta shake her hand because you did the best you could. But if you're able to like really get her in the crowd, get her a little bit, get her flustered enough, so that way you can force a turnover, get them later in the shot clock, get them to throw up like a desperation kind of shot. If you're able to do that, that's a victory right there, and then you build on that and then climb from there.
Absolutely. I mean, you also look at Minnesota. I think Alana Smith, a quiet 14. I looked at that and I was like, oh, okay, 6 of 9 from the floor. That's another player that can get hot easily. And so for it to be a quiet 14, that's something that New York is going to have to keep an eye on. I think she was very successful in being able to, she bodied Stewie and Jonquil Jones much better on the defensive side than I was expecting.
Yeah, I think that from Lan, I think Lan was all defense this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah, so like Lan, she's really been able to make that big impact. And I think that for Minnesota, like, they still lost the rebound battle, but it wasn't as overwhelming as it was in game 1. So the fact that they were able to chip into it a little bit, I think is a good sign for them. And I think for Lan in particular, it's hey, if I can body JJ up a little bit, force her into those tough fadeaways, if I'm able to do that, and if I'm able to keep her from 9 rebounds is still close to double-double, but still,
very close.
like, keep her from not getting a double-double. Hey, I've done what I can do. Now it's just for everyone else to sort of like pick up what they can and then move from there.
And to that point, I think Bridget Carlton and Kayla McBride scoring less than 10, that might be something that Minnesota wants to see change. And with the series now going to Minnesota and the Twin Cities, I think that's something that we can almost guarantee is going to change.
Yeah, and I think that, especially one maxim that's true across basketball history is that role players play better at home. So somebody's going to have the big game off the bench. Like when you think back to the Commissioner's Cup, Xander Lassini was able to stick the daggers in New York late. K-Mac was able to turn up. Even in game 1, she was able to get it going. So for New York, you have to be prepared for, okay, which role player is gonna cook us tonight, and how do we survive that, and how do we do what we can to ensure that we have just enough to win?
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the bench, Kayla Thornton, Niara Sabali, and Courtney Vandersloot, Sabali, the only player from those 3 under 10 minutes. Do think they were significant minutes. She had 2 really big O boards. The New York Liberty ended up, that was the possession where Sab got called for travel.
Travel basically.
So that was the tough part of that, but that Niara was down there battling, giving them more O boards is exactly the kind of impact that I think a player like her can make.
Something interesting that I noticed tonight was that KT was the first sub coming off the bench.
I did notice that, and relatively early.
Yeah, I was like, that's an interesting change up. I liked it because, hey, for a team like this, if you get more size out there and you're able to maintain what you're doing, that's super valuable. And one thing I loved about the game that Stewie and Sabrina had is that in game one, like when they would drive, they would sort of force up those tough shots at the rim. Tonight, they were more willing to make the kickouts on those driving plays. Like there was one, I think towards the end of the first quarter when the Liberty were up 6, Stewie drives, Lan comes in to help on the strong side, and then flare out, KT's wide open for 3, builds the lead to 9. And I think what was beautiful about that play in particular is that if Minnesota's rotations were on time, one pass away from KT is Sabrina Ionescu. So if you're in New York, you did everything exactly right. You got the shot you wanted, and if that was closed off, your ace who's made like 3 3-pointers in the first quarter already is wide open. So you did everything exactly right, and the bench players were able to sort of like bring that energy, keep that connectivity, and let the starters get enough rest, so that way down the stretch you could be like, okay, I'm gonna climb with you guys' shoulders, take us to the finish line, and they did.
Absolutely. We talked so much about the odds and evens, or the ups and downs of the New York Liberty just in the regular season. If you look at the split by quarter, 10 points was the swing in the first quarter. Yep. Dead even at 18 points per side in the second quarter leading into the half. And then the Lynx actually outscored the New York Liberty just barely. But if it's not for that early start for New York, this could be a different game, because the Liberty did outscore the Lynx in the fourth quarter, but not by a significant, it was 6 points.
Yeah.
So, you have 6 to 8 point swing, but the biggest lead for the Liberty was 17 overall in the game. The Lynx never led this game.
Which is really surprising.
And actually, there were times where the New York Liberty, you felt that maybe they were going to slip into that stagnant offense, that kind of lethargic defense, and they were able to turn it around because there were no lead changes in this game, no ties in this game. So that's huge. And you have to think that Sandy Brondello and the coaching staff for the New York Liberty are telling them that's not enough. And if you're Minnesota, you don't like the loss, but you're looking at these stats and saying, this is where we need to impact. I said it on CBS right after the game, but if the Lynx get a better start, then this in this game alone, and certainly in game 1, I mean, that could be huge for them, but that hasn't been the case. The New York Liberty have been able to punch first. You have to imagine that's something that they want to do. I think Sandy's telling her team, we have to finish as strong as we start. I think if you're Minnesota, you have to get a better start. You have to command the game early on, especially on home court.
Yeah, one of the things that Courtney Williams was telling us yesterday was that they were, I guess, like, it took them a while to sort of like shake off the huge punch New York threw in game 1. It took them a while to get there. The same thing happened again tonight, where it's like you knew New York was going to come at you with like heavy offense. Like Sabrina had the building tilt early. Will was really able to sort of like get Minnesota off balance, and then gradually it's like, I feel like it's almost like a starting pitcher who's terrible in the first inning, but is great for innings 2 through 7. It's like, I need you to get off to a better start so that we're not having to crawl from behind throughout the game. And I think for Minnesota in game 3, how they start, I think is going to be super critical, because for them, even though you're at home, you don't want to fall behind by 10, 12, 15 early on, because you're having to expend so much energy coming down the stretch. And then, they had the few days off before, like they had the few days off between game 1 and game 2, but they just came off a 5-game knuckle drag bar fight with the Sun. So it's like, hey, eventually the bill is going to come due when it comes to you guys needing that rest and that opportunity. And then as the series goes deeper, there aren't going to be any more 2-day off days in between. It's just one day, and then you're back to work. So if you start slow, your legs get heavier, everything gets more chaotic, everything gets more frantic. And then for a group that, for as great as they have been, this is still their first journey together on this finals run. Eventually, there's going to be just that one slip, and then one slip is all it takes against a team that's as good as you are.
That's absolutely correct. And then, of course, you have to say the same for the New York Liberty. Perhaps the difference is that New York has already experienced the slip, and it seems like even when they felt that they were on their way back to a slip in Game 2, they were able to turn it around. So they have that immediate, it's a recent history. Whereas Minnesota, cognitively, it's one thing to know something, but another to be able to execute it on the court, with your muscle memory, with your physical play. But again, these are two really great teams. I think they match up just about as well as two teams could match up. I think they're similar in a decent amount of ways. Each has its own little secret sauce. And so that's what Minnesota is going to have to figure out. They haven't really, I don't know that Minnesota would say they've even had, their best basketball in a stretch of 10 minutes consecutive, whether that's a whole quarter or even literally like momentum from one quarter into the next. So if you're Minnesota, you have to figure that out. If you're New York, you have to keep that in mind and continue to press the buttons defensively to make sure that they never find that rhythm.
Like one thing about coaches is that they're never happy unless it's like a 100% A plus across the board.
Right.
So after game one, Shell's like, man, that rebounding number like ticked me off. I ain't like that at all. And then Sandy said, it's like, hey man, we gotta like do better, sort of like really driving ahead and really keeping them far from us. So both coaches, great as they are, they're gonna be like, hey, this win was cool, but I need better from all y'all.
That's
and
it.
then when you come back at it in the series, it's like, okay, can you like take the thing that I've been telling you to do, apply it, and then I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna feel good.
Yeah, and more importantly, we put ourselves in a position to win the ball game.
Yep.
And that's the more important thing. Keeping Cheryl Reeve and Sandy Brandella happy might be the cherry on top. And they probably feel the same way about their players because I was rolling. We mentioned this in Slack, but Sab looked like she was about to curse everybody on the bench out when they didn't review that play. Kayla Thornton did catch she caught the arm. Was that Smith? Was that Lance?
I think it was a fee.
Was it Fee? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either way, Sab was ready to quit on everybody. She was like, "Oh, you're not going to challenge this?"
Yeah. One thing that I think we talked about before is that basketball players don't think they ever commit fouls. Like you could just like push someone on the court, and it's like, why are you calling it a foul?
What do you mean?
Like you can't. No, elbow is not part of the basketball, friend. I'm sorry. Like I know you don't. Hey, foul's a foul. Like,
Foul's a foul.
Sometimes like.
Yeah.
I also love like
hilarious.
players get so indignant too. Where it's like, what do you mean?
What do you mean? How dare you say that I fouled? I've never fouled in my life, in my whole career. Never once have I ever fouled anyone, intentional or otherwise. So yeah, well, you will be on the road. You're following the team to Minnesota.
Yes, I have never been to Minneapolis before. I asked a friend of mine what it's like. He told me it is colder than I think. So my winter jacket is in my suitcase.
All
I have to
right.
pack some clothes,
There we go.
some fancy shirts, because I feel like I have to wear like a fancy shirt for the finals. So I got that. I got a book. I got some books I gotta pack. Because it's only a 2-hour flight, so
Okay,
yeah.
that's
So
not too bad.
I'm gonna find some books. I'm gonna find a book to read.
And you get an hour back.
Yes, look at that. Me in the central time zone in my warm coat, ready to catalog it all.
I cannot wait. I'm gonna have you hopefully tap into Black Rosie Media headquarters. I will be in the central time zone, but in Tulsa. I'll be on Tulsa time.
Elsa.
That's right. Healing up, for those who don't know. Brian, I know you know. Healing up my injury. No one's healthy this time of the W season.
Everyone's banged up to various
That's
degrees.
it.
So now all of us are just trying to get to the championship.
That's it.
We're
That's
almost
it.
there.
But Brian will be our eyes and ears on the ground in addition to everything else that he's got going on. Always grateful to have you. There's a nice contingency going to Minnesota.
Like Erica, you know this as well as we do. One thing about people from Brooklyn, we travel.
Hey, let's
And we
go.
we loud as hell, man. Like if you
Brooklyn!
hear a loud yeah, that's one of us.
That's it. There you go.
And also for people in Los Angeles, if you hear a loud roar, that's gonna be Mets fans tonight. We there too.
Oh, Lego. That's right. Absolutely. What a time to be a New Yorker. I guess, the Yankees are doing things as well, but yeah, exactly. But for Brian Florence and Erica L. Ayala here, thank you so much for tapping in to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media. As we said, Brian's going to be in Minnesota. I'll be at headquarters, but either way, we will have you covered the rest of the way. I've said I think we're going 5, Brian. I think we're going 5.
Me too. I feel like we're all gonna take the great plane back here. It's gonna be Game 5. Gonna be raucous. We got a lot more fun basketball in store.
That's it. Well, if it does go to 5, as we both think it will, then we will both be right back here to bring you the pregame. I'm getting my words right this time. We're going to get the pregame. And of course, we will talk about who is the 2024 WNBA Finals champion. Either way, it will be history.
Yep.
On the one side, you have the New York Liberty going for their first ever franchise championship. Not the first time they've been here, but haven't quite gotten to the top of the mountain.
Got a few more miles to go.
A few more miles to go. On the other side, Cheryl Reeve trying to lead Minnesota to 5 championships. No one has ever done that in the WNBA. So this is going to be historic either way. We had historic performances in this game on both sides. Fee, Stewie, Sab in the record books, not just for the finals, but especially on the Liberty side for franchise history.
Yep.
So baby, it's exciting.
Yep.
It is so exciting. We're excited. I was a little put out that they didn't do Gotta Get Up today. We ain't had no time for it.
I was waiting for that. I'm like,
I know. I was like, it is the 5-minute mark in the fourth quarter.
They did the shirt toss without the music.
Well,
it's
yeah,
very
because there was a review at that time, so there was a lot going on. So, but we didn't hear our theme song. I was a little hurt.
Play the music over
We're gonna
review.
play it on the outro for y'all. All right, thank you so much.
Bye.
Hey, Roz.
Hey, did we
Hi.
have perfect timing?
A perfect timing.